Coming to you from 4,200 feet in the hills of Oregon, it's the voice of Chi-Town, the reddest beard in the high desert, your host of the MOA broadcast, Sam Wilson. All right, folks, we got a fantastic show, as always, lined out for you today here on the Make It Out Alive broadcast. This is going to be an audio-only episode. We didn't get video for this one, so you don't have to wait for that if you subscribe to the videos or whatever else. This won't be audio only. As always, if you have any feedback, ideas, questions, answers, or just criticism, or you just don't like my face, feel free to hit us up at info@gearconvoy.com. Our website is www.gearconvoy.com, and that email address again was info@gearconvoy.com. We haven't done any subscriber or listener emails in a while. Had a bunch of other stuff to get done, and some of them they weren't really conducive to sharing over the air. Either they were too complex or long or profane. People like to use profanity when they talk to me, apparently, and describe my looks and my personality. So no problem. Don't worry. Wilson can take it. But don't worry, survivors. If you're out there listening, I am here for you. We've got show highlights today. This is episode 42 of the Make It Out Alive broadcast. And our show highlights include Chirac is still eating itself alive. For those of you outside the United States, Chirac refers to Chicago, but many people feel it's more like a war zone, and they use the term Chirac, and I can't frankly say they're wrong, but it is still eating itself alive. We have buttered coffee coming up again, pepper spray, and wild dog attacks out here in the hills of Oregon. More First Amendment auditors, HIT training, that's HIT, high intensity training, and naked backyard break-ins. So anyway, survivors, as always, got a great show. Let's get into it. Right now, we are in the absolute best of all worlds for me when it comes to the weather and the temperature and everything else here in the hills of Oregon. We're at 4,200 feet in the southern hills, the mountains, if you will, of Oregon, smaller mountains in Oregon. And we are in the early part of fall still, first 30 days of it still. And it's the best part because you have those nice, crisp, cool mornings and evenings, and the beautiful sunny days with that fall smell in the air. Fall is my favorite season of the year. I wish it lasted longer, and especially at this elevation over 4,000 feet, it doesn't last nearly as long as I would like. Missouri actually had absolutely fantastic autumns and falls. That's where I was from originally. But they're really great here. They're just not as long. And I tell you what, coffee never tastes better to me than it does on a nice, crisp fall morning with the smell of the leaves in the air. I'm still mowing the grass. In fact, I got to do it tomorrow. We actually had some rain here in the high deserts of southern Oregon, so I haven't got the lawn mowed in the last couple of, week or two. It's been slowing down in growth, but it still needs to be mowed at least one last time. So I'll probably do that today, this Friday, or Saturday, and that way I'll have it for the next morning. I'll be able to smell that beautiful, freshly mowed grass smell. I'll have my coffee outside looking at a mountain from the porch there. Beautiful view and all kinds of fog, of course. But absolutely best time of year. Love this to death. And I tell you what, one of my favorite ways to do coffee, we talk about coffee a lot here. You might say I'm a bit of a coffee fiend. I've talked about a number of different ways that I like to prepare the coffee. The bun machine is great for doing a whole pot very quickly, whole pot of coffee. I love French press. You got to make sure you drink a little quicker, though, because it doesn't stay as hot, obviously, unless you have a warmer. That works, too. But the AeroPress has been quickly becoming, and has become for the last probably almost 2 years now, one of my favorite methods of brewing coffee, especially when it's just one cup at a time. The AeroPress is nothing more than a fancy, or maybe simplified, French press, and it has a small piece of paper, a small paper filter it's like a 1 cup at a time French press, is really what it boils down to. And you put this small disc of paper. By the way, after you go through the initial pack of paper filters that come with your AeroPress, I get my refills or whatever they're called on Amazon, some knockoff brand. They fit just as good. They're slightly different in size, but they work just fine and save a ton of money because they're much more expensive through AeroPress brand. And you can get the brown ones, which haven't been bleached, instead of like the bleached white paper ones that come from AeroPress. It imparts a slightly different flavor. Now, I've noticed in life that some people have more sensitive palates and some don't. So some people are not going to notice it. I did. I could taste, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm crazy, I don't know. But it tasted slightly different with the brown paper filters. It didn't have that very, very faint, extremely faint chemical flavor or just a tinge of chemical flavor, and I prefer the brown paper ones. Anyway, because obviously to get the paper from brown to white, it gets bleached or whatever chemical process it is they use. So the brown paper ones I like, but the AeroPress is a fantastic way to do that. And, excuse me, when you add a nice teaspoon to a full, big old heaping tablespoon of grass-fed butter, oh, it is delicious, especially for the first 1 or 2 cups of coffee. I usually drink my coffee just straight black. However, for the first 1 to 3 cups, I usually drink about 1 liter to 1.5 liters of coffee a day. But the first 1 or 2 cups particularly, I make sure to add a big tablespoon of that grass-fed butter to it. Just really accentuates the flavor, gives it a deeper, richer flavor. Especially, I like a French grind or whatever. I can't think of the name right now. But a dark roast, French roast, there we go. A dark roast coffee. I really like a deep, strong flavor, just like I like a deep, smoky bourbon. When it comes to coffee, I like that deep, black French roast flavor. And whenever you grind that up and do it either AeroPress or the French press, it really gives you a deep, rich cup of coffee. And that with the grass-fed butter is just fantastic. Occasionally, once in a great while, I'll put in like a half a teaspoon of the raw sugar or the turbinado sugar or whatever it is. And that just really, that's almost like a dessert at that point because I don't do a whole lot of sugar, especially like white sugar in my diet. But anyway, this is my favorite time of year for drinking that hot coffee in the morning. And we had a listener contact us. They did the same thing. They didn't do it because of me. I think they were doing it already. But they take and they put their butter and the coffee into their Ninja or the Bullet blender, whatever it is, and they make their the bulletproof coffee concoction or whatever it's called. Look that up if you haven't already. It's a pretty neat thing. You add the grass-fed butter and whatever I forget what the other thing is, some type of triglycerides or something. I don't remember. But they put it in the butter. When you do that, it emulsifies the butter a little better than just melting it in the hot coffee. So anyway, thanks for phoning that one in or emailing that one in, our listener in the deep South. And last night for dinner, I do a lot of steak. Okay, I love New York strip steaks, and where I live, there's a good butcher. Get a very, very fair price. These good 12-ounce. I usually go for like a 3/4 pound strip steak. Okay, to me, one of my absolute favorite meals is a strip steak with those Michelin star scrambled eggs I've talked about. If you've never tried, if you're a new listener, if you've never tried or heard of the Michelin star scrambled eggs, look it up. Very, very easy to make at home. It is just a much creamier, fluffier version of scrambled eggs, and it pairs extremely well with steak. But I had taken a little break and doing some chicken. I'm not a huge pork fan. I love pork steaks and certain things, but I prefer chicken and beef, my two favorites. But so taking a little break from the beef and had the baked half chicken with the Michelin star scrambled eggs. It also goes really well with one of my other favorites, the basmati white rice. So, however you want to do it, you bake the chicken in the oven. It's so easy. You can do it while you're doing several other things. I buy the half chicken at the supermarket and the meat market where I go here in Southern Oregon, and I'm sure you can get it plenty of other places. They have the pre-seasoned chicken. So you can get thighs, breasts, wings, drumsticks, whatever it is you want. It's, raw with the skin on, and it's pre-seasoned. So literally all you have to do is take a pan or a cookie sheet or whatever, baking sheet, whatever you want to call it, and you put your aluminum foil down there, a little bit of oil, and you can put the chicken right on there, stick it in the oven at 400 degrees, and between 20 and 45 minutes later, depending how big the piece of chicken is, your chicken is done, ready, and if you use a thermometer to get it out at the correct temperature, it is extremely juicy. I usually put it on broil for the last 3 to 5 minutes, and it just gives a nice little crispy crust to the outside of the chicken, and that is fantastic, either with the scrambled eggs or the basmati rice, and there's very, very little cleanup. Toss the aluminum foil, and you got one pot or pan to clean up, whether you have rice or scrambled eggs. So that is that. Enough food talk. Obviously, you can tell I love food. I love coffee, and I try and incorporate those into the show. I've had some emails and questions about what about this direction for the show and that. Guys, I enjoy just talking about whatever interests me and having fun with this. So that's kind of the main theme and preparedness overall. And hopefully you like it. And if not, no problem. That's the beauty of the open market and all the choices and selections we have today. However, if you choose to be an MOA survivor and follow along with the show and enjoy it, we appreciate your support and your listenership. So let's jump in. Let me get a quick sip here. Okay, before I jump into our first crime spree in Chirac, I wanted to talk about, we've mentioned this a number of times before. Where are we at on time here? Let me check our... Okay, we're doing good. Mentioned this a number of times before, these First Amendment auditors. So if you're a new listener to the show, or if you've forgotten or you just don't know, there are these guys that are called First Amendment auditors. And this is not to be a negative piece or a positive piece. We're just laying out the facts here because I'm still a little undecided on how I feel about some of them, and I'll explain why. But these are guys that take their camera or their cell phone or body cams or whatever. Some of them have very elaborate setups. Some of them just have probably a burner phone, so if it gets confiscated by the police, they don't have to worry about it. And they walk up and they start video recording interactions with people, whether it's in the public, whether it's at government property, which is public property, or government offices, or interactions with police or whatever else, to basically see how it's going to go. On its face, it can be a little annoying to be, recorded while you're eating at an outdoor restaurant or going about your business and whatever else. But the bottom line is, the Supreme Court has ruled this is a constitutionally protected activity, and I respect freedom. To me, freedom is there's not a whole lot that's more important than that. It is extremely important. So if it's legal and it's part of their freedom, I don't want to infringe. I don't think I would like having somebody stick a camera in my face or phone me while I'm, film me while I'm eating or whatever else. But if it's their right, it's their right. So let's move on. But the problem is these guys have been doing this. There have been a number of these going for, we're probably sneaking up on a decade now that this kind of phenomenon has been going on. And a lot of the public and law enforcement has been getting used to it. In the beginning of it all, they could walk into anywhere and with their phone going, and the sun would catch on fire. People would freak out, and they would call the cops. They would get assaulted. They would get, pushed around, which is great because what they want in general is content, right? They want something that's going to get likes, clicks, shares, follows, subscribes, and all that. And I'm sure some of them want to make a positive, effect, a bit of a change in how people perceive this. But at the end of the day, that's where the money is, right? If you get more likes and follows and clicks and so forth. But the problem is now we're getting to a point where more and more people have been exposed to this, and they're not reacting as insane as they used to, for the most part, going back a few years. And so these guys are doing more and more extreme things, which is, I've talked about this before. It's an obvious natural progression. When people become accustomed to this, you got to start doing more and more extreme things to get that reaction so that your followers, are going to watch the video. If you walk into a store and wave your camera around or your phone around for 5 or 10 minutes, nothing happens, no one's going to watch that video. And some of these guys get thousands, tens of thousands, or hundreds of thousands of views in a couple of hours or a day or a week or two. And there's some money in that. So, it's understandable. I get it. That's capitalism at work. And I don't really have a problem with the constitutionality of it or the freedom side of it or whatever else. But we're seeing now these videos of people showing up to cops and public officials' homes, which is legal until they're told, not to come back, and or they're walking around open carrying in places like Florida with ARs and other things. And I'm not against the freedom at all, but my point is simply that sooner or later, this is a natural progression, of the intensity of the whole thing. Sooner or later, someone's going to get hurt, and probably hurt badly. A lot of these guys have already been roughed up by the cops. Some of these cops are absolutely insane. Years ago, I probably would have gone with the notion or the conclusion, if you will, that most cops are good and there's a few bad apples. But what we are seeing now, whether you agree with these guys and their tactics or not, we are seeing more and more officers who show up and just their ego, and I get it, they're being antagonized. They are, in some cases. But that's your job as a police officer, is to not, let your emotions and your ego rule the day. And at the end of the day, if you're a cop and you're listening to this, I am not anti-cop at all. I am pro law and order and peace. Okay. I don't like violence. I don't want to see, mayhem, bedlam, whatever you want to call it. if you're a cop and you show up to one of these situations where it looks like there's a First Amendment auditor, they're videotaping and trying to get a rise, or they're just doing a silent audit where they don't say anything, the first question I would ask myself is there a crime being committed? If not, tell them to have a good day and hop in your car and leave, man. Because some of these cops, they show up and their emotions and their ego get involved, and they get so caught up in getting that person's ID or in detaining them unnecessarily or illegally even, that they really get themselves off into a wreck. And a number of police departments, cities, and cops have been sued successfully by these First Amendment auditors. And I'm not saying I'm against them. I respect their rights. Because these cops have let their egos get involved, and they have blatantly broken the law when they're being told, don't do this, you're breaking the law, you're violating my rights, you're infringing on my freedoms, and so forth, and it's on video. So it's going to, excuse me, it's going to be interesting, because I just saw one the other day where these guys are outside of an FBI building with ARs walking on, they're strapped on their back. Legal, but man, you're walking a fine line, because you never know when you're going to meet someone who is a law enforcement officer who may be having a really, really bad day. They may not have any idea of the law. They may be mentally unstable. They may have just snapped because their world, got flipped upside down, whatever. And despite being constitutionally protected, your rights are about to get trampled on, along with maybe your health and or your life. So it's an interesting thing. If you're interested in finding out more about this, I don't really want to endorse or list a certain auditor or their channel or whatever, because I'm still not entirely sure how I feel about some aspects of it. But if you look up First Amendment auditor, you can find any and all of the ones that I've talked about. They're very easy to find on YouTube and social media and so forth. So anyway, it's an interesting thing, and I look forward to seeing the development. Hopefully it goes well for everyone involved. But that being said, speaking of crime, we have a pair of stories in, where else? Chirac. Chicago is like the new Florida of wanton lawlessness. Let's just jump right in. We're not going to spend a lot of time on these. They're simple stories, but unfortunate. I don't think anybody dies in these, so it's all good. We go to ABC 7, Chicago. 2-year-old boy and a woman shot inside their vehicle in Greater Grand Crossing, Chicago police say. A young boy and a woman were shot while inside of a vehicle Wednesday evening on the city's south side. The shooting happened around 7:36 p.m. in the 6900 block of South Lafayette Avenue. A 30-year-old woman was shot in the knee, and a 2-year-old boy was shot in the foot while they were inside of a parked vehicle. This is outside of a McDonald's. Okay? Police said they were both taken to hospitals in good condition, so they all made it and everything else. It doesn't elaborate much more. It just simply says, police said the woman did not provide further details about the circumstances of the shooting, and no arrests have been made, as Chicago PD continues to investigate. So they were just hanging out, I don't know, going through the drive-thru, whatever, outside of a McDonald's, and they got shot through their vehicle. This 30-year-old woman and a 2-year-old boy were inside the car. She got it in the knee, and the 2-year-old boy was shot in the foot. So, yeah, what in the world, Chicago? But wait, there's more. Next headline, also coming to us from ABC 7 Chicago. Woman exchanges gunfire with suspects during home invasion in Woodlawn, Chicago police say. A victim exchanged gunfire with suspects during a home invasion. The shootout happened in the 1400 block of East 65th Place in Woodlawn. 2 male offenders with a firearm. So 2 guys are armed. They made their way into a home and battered a 26-year-old man, police said. The suspect then exchanged fire with a 48-year-old woman at the home. So they got into a gunfight with a 48-year-old woman and lost. They took off. The suspect fled the scene in a dark-colored vehicle westbound on 65th Place. The man who was battered suffered a bruise to his head. No other injuries were reported and no arrests have been made as, Chicago police continue to investigate. Now, get a load of this. I had saved those, so when I do my research throughout the week for the episodes of the MOA broadcast, the Make It On Live broadcast, I save articles and links and so forth, so I can then go later, look them up and compile them into material for the show. Whenever I saved this one, it was under home invasion in Chicago. Whenever I typed this in the search engine to go ahead and pull up the article, so many articles on home invasions in Chicago in the last week came up that it took me 5 minutes to get to the one that I had originally intended to look up. That was another one. Same time period, Chicago PD issues alert about home invasion and attempted sexual assault and burglaries on the north side. Briefly, what happened was there was an alert about a recent home invasion in the Rogers Park neighborhood, along with an attempted criminal sexual assault, which also begs the question, is there an attempted non-criminal sexual assault? I don't know. Anything's possible in Chirac, though. Early Friday morning, a nearly naked man pried open a basement window of a home in the 2000 block of West Lunt Avenue and attacked a 32-year-old woman in her bathroom. She was able to fight off the man. After that, there were reports of attempted burglaries in the same block, according to the police department. It all happened in about 45 minutes. About an hour before that home invasion, there was another attempted criminal sexual assault about a mile north in Evanston, police said. Evanston. The suspect had a similar description. He was also fought off in that situation. He was trying to remove the victim's clothes and choking her when a neighbor came out to help. He ran off, and wait for it, Chicago police continue to investigate. And this is not even funny at all, but it's insane. And the point that I'm making, as we've mentioned many times in the past, folks, we're not going to get politically aligned here on the MOA broadcast. I am so dead tired. And I respect the fact that there are many people that have different podcasts. They have different shows. There are different news outlets. I respect the fact they get to talk about whatever they want. And I mean that literally, tremendously. I respect their freedom. But there are so many shows that talk about nonstop politics and partisan politics and choosing left, right, whatever, this wing, that wing, so on and so forth, that I'm so tired of the political aspect of it. Yes, some of these stories inevitably are going to have a political side to them, but I am so tired of it being all political. But the notion of Chicago, of all places, getting bent out of shape, that federal law enforcement is getting sent there to help correct the situation is absolutely absurd. I saw multiple shows in the last week where they were interviewing random people, and these shows can be fixed. There's no doubt about that. These interviews can be set up. It can all be fake. I get that. But multiple people who were against the federal deployment of federal troops in Chicago for law enforcement, they were against it. They were interviewing people, and the people they interviewed on the streets were positively talking about and wanting federal law enforcement intervention because crime is so bad there. So whatever, it is what it is. Man, oh man. I'm not going to have too much time getting into this. We got to move on to the next one. But you know, I've mentioned before on this this show what a fan I am of pepper spray. I walk my dog Bacon, and where I live is very remote. It's an extremely small town, and it's bordered by absolutely nothingness. And we have a lot of what they call, we're near an Indian reservation, and we have a lot of what are called res dogs. Now, you can find a lot of different definitions for that, but a lot of these are basically roaming wild dog packs, which are exactly what they sound like, and pit bulls are very common. And so I've mentioned this show a number of times that Bacon and myself, even my white pointer, he's about 55, 60 pounds, give or take a little bit. So he's not an attack dog. He's what would be traditionally a bird hunting dog, but I don't go bird hunting, so he's just a really, really good boy. And we have been attacked so many times. I mean, random attack. You're walking down the street or down a trail, and literally a wild. But this is no joke. For those of you from the city, this is no joke. This is how quick it happens. You're walking along, just they're listening to the birds tweeting and chirping in the air, and smelling the beautiful, outdoorsy scent of the wilderness. And the next thing you know, you're beset upon by 4, 5, or 6 vicious dogs that are bent on taking a bite out of your. Well, let's keep this family friendly, but a bite out of you. And I'm not talking about crime. And so I've gone through multiple, probably, I think if I ran it through my head the other day, I'm on my 4th can of pepper spray in the last 18 months or so. And just happened again the other day. We'll go into it in a future show because I'm running out of time here. But yeah, we got 4 dogs. There were 4, I remember exactly. There were 1 gray and 1 black, and then 1, I don't know about the other 2. But the gray one was actually a very, very good looking dog. And yeah, they were nipping and biting and bacon. I mean, I pepper sprayed the gray one on the black one, and the other two decided they didn't want anything else to do with it. And so the point is simply this: for the MOA preparedness angle of all of this, make sure you're ready, folks, because there was no sign of dogs, no nothing, no sound, no nothing. And they came out of nowhere. And here's the thing to remember. If you've ever dealt with multiple attacking dogs like that, they don't just all stay in a group of 4 and come straight at you like in the movies when Chuck Norris is fighting, 26 guys and they just sit there and come at him in a straight line, one after another. What happens is these dogs will sit there and circle you. And as they're running around very quickly, circling you and your pet, they're nipping and biting at you as they close in there in concentric circles and get closer and closer and nipping and biting. And so you got to be prepared. And I was. It wound up being no big deal. We didn't have to go to level 2 threat assessment and enforcement. It all went well. The pepper spray did the work, and they decided they had had enough and went on about their day. So just keep that in mind. Make sure you're prepared. We also wanted to go into, I've talked about this before. There have been a number. I had like 5 or more stories on influencers, these social media influencers. We've talked about this in the past. They seem to have a bizarre rate of death in this particular profession or endeavor, whatever you want to call it. But I had 5 stories in the last week or so of influencers that died and or / killed themselves / died or passed away under mysterious circumstances, etc. I need to do some research into this because there has got to be some sort of phenomenon with the high mortality rate of some of these influencers, quote unquote, on social media. It's really bizarre. Every week, there are multiple stories about some of these people having like 50,000 to 1 million or more followers on the various social media platforms, and they just up and die in bizarre or freak accidents or quote-unquote suicides. It's really interesting. And I'm not trying to say there's anything necessarily nefarious going on, but it is an odd rate of occurrence that this happens. So anyway, we'll dig into that future show. Just wanted to pass that along. I found it to be of note in my research. And, it is what it is. So that's my opinion on that. Now, folks, let me get a quick sip. Hold on. Oh, that is delicious. Okay. We are going to do classic movie spotlight today. I've received a good bit of emails and correspondence over this. Folks have liked this segment. I haven't done it for the last couple of episodes because I've done some shorter 30 to 35 minute or so episodes, and it takes a few minutes. We're going to do one today on one of my favorite movies of all time. There's about 10 to 12 movies that I can just watch anytime. And these are not, and almost all of them are from the 70s, early 80s. Okay, and today's example is no exception. This is The Getaway with Steve McQueen from 1972. I'm going to read a brief synopsis, and then we'll kind of dig into it. We're not going to give away too many spoilers, but it is a great film. This is a family-friendly film. It would be rated PG to maybe PG-13 today. I don't even know what it's technically rated. There is no, I don't recall any nudity at all. There's very, very little profanity, and there are 1 or 2 gunfight scenes, or there is a splash of blood. Sam Peckinpah was the director, I believe, and you can see his DNA, no pun intended, in some of these action sequences where there are really, really good submachine gun and shotgun sequences, some that result in loss of life and some that are just property destruction. But a couple of great sequences, really great film. The story, and again, I'll read this from the internet. I found some review, I think, and then kind of, made it my own here. Career criminal Carter Doc McCoy, which is Steve McQueen, is granted parole. It says unexpectedly, but if you watch the film, it's not unexpectedly at all. He basically pays up to get himself, the guy on the parole board is dirty, okay? And he wants to recruit Steve McQueen. Forget the review. I'll just tell you my own version. The bad guy in this is played by Ben Johnson. Now, Ben Johnson, you may recognize that name from a lot of really, really good Westerns. This guy was tall back then. If you watch him in a lot of Westerns, I don't know what height he was, but he had to be well over 6 foot because back in a lot of those movies, he towers over everybody. And he plays the bad guy in this, Jack Benyon. He's some kind of businessman, but he's also on the parole board. And Steve McQueen's character starts off the film in prison. And you see him, he just can't take it. He is not a prison kind of dude. He's losing his mind and he's crumbling. So he basically makes a deal with the devil to get back out. And part of that deal with the devil involves him having to go on do one last big heist, a robbery, to pay off Benyon and his henchmen, and then he gets his own cut, and that's going to be his way out. Okay, so him and his girlfriend or wife, I think they're married. which is played by Ally McGraw. They have to go out and do this. Was it? What do we see here? Yeah, Ally McGraw. For some reason, I was thinking Ali Sheedy, but that's the '80s version with the Breakfast Club and so forth, the Rat Pack. They go out and they have to pull this one last robbery, and the whole thing it goes down the toilet. Everything goes bad, and then it's just a gigantic, on the run / getaway / shootout to get down to Mexico with the money they have left after the whole thing goes sideways. Hence the name, The Getaway. Now, the interesting thing about this film is Steve McQueen's character. He's the main guy, but he is not a good dude. He's a bad guy, really. He kills people, he assaults people, he steals, he does all kinds of bad things. He's not a good guy at all. Now, he stops short of just out and out plain cold-blooded murder, but he is not a good guy. But because it's the strength of Steve McQueen, his character and his persona and his brand, of course, you're rooting for him, you like him, and so forth. And anyway, it is an absolutely great film. There's lots of good driving action sequences. There's machine gun sequences. There's shotgun sequences. There's good, real simple, basic, but good plot. And Steve McQueen, of course, brings it. Sam Peckinpah is the director. If you don't know that name, look it up. You will obviously or instantly recognize some Sam Peckinpah films. Great director, really brought a sense of style and a very distinct, style, I guess you would say, for lack of a better word. I've already used that word, but whatever, to his films, and was really, I like his stuff. He does have, for what was considered for the time, like some ultra-violent type stuff, but this film would easily be a PG to PG-13 film, and you could watch this with a family on Friday night, and adults and kids both would be satisfied. It is not like a Disney movie, where they kind of go so soft that it's no longer fun. It is a great film. The Getaway, 1972, Steve McQueen, Ally McGraw, and I almost forgot the bad guy. The bad guy is played by Al Lettieri, and he was the bad guy. You may recognize him from The Godfather. He was Sollozzo, the Turk, the bad guy in that film. And he was also in another fantastic Michael Winner film. Michael Winner and Charles Bronson team up. They did a bunch of great films in the 70s and 80s. Mr. Majestic, which was based on an Elmore Leonard novel. If you have not read, if you like to read fiction and you don't want to get really bogged down in some of the deeper, thicker fiction that runs like 500, 600, 700, 800 to 1,000 pages, get you some Elmore Leonard novels. Get them off of Amazon, Kindle, used bookstores, wherever. Elmore Leonard novels, he's probably got 20, 30, maybe 40, I don't know, a ton of his novels have been converted into screenplays, movies, and so forth. Anyway, Mr. Majestic, Al Lettieri was the bad guy in that. He dies in all three of them. I'll spoil that part. Excuse me. He dies great, and he's an excellent bad guy. He's the kind of bad guy that you just can't wait until they fire that shot or punch him or whatever it is, the explosion that takes him. You can't wait for him to get killed because he's just a bad, bad dude, and he's a nasty man. So Mr. Majestic, also a great film. We've talked about that here before on the show. Check that one out as well. But great film, along with The Getaway. Fantastic. Love it. Check it out. Okay. And we're going to have to do the high-intensity training. I had a segment on high-intensity training. We've got a lot of feedback over that. People will get heated over this. Some people think it's all, how do we say this in a radio-friendly way, bull crap. And some people realize correctly that it is fantastic when used and applied properly. We're not going to have time to get into that whole segment today because where are we at? Yes, we've got to keep moving. That being said, speaking of all the crashing cars, because a lot of cars are destroyed in The Getaway. Speaking of crashing cars... Everyone's favorite rageaholic, Alec Baldwin, was involved in a car crash and smashed up his wife, Ilaria, who is from Spain, not from Spain, actually from Boston, whatever. So if you don't know the story on that, I try not to get into like celebrity gossip. It's just one of the lowest forms of intellectual engagement and content possible. But she's from Boston. She's a white lady from Boston. And for some reason, she felt the need to, let me put this very diplomatically, let people come to the conclusion that she was originally from Spain. Okay. And one of the funniest, but she's a white lady from Boston. English is her first language, as far as I know. And she's in these interviews where she's acting like she's from Spain, apparently, or whatever her deal is. And there's this one where she's on a cooking show. And now keep in mind, this is a regular American person who speaks English. And she's like, how you say, she's doing some cooking show. She's adding ingredients to her dish. And she's like, how you say a cucumber? And she doesn't come up with the answer. Her assistant or sidekick or whatever it is like, yeah, that's called a cucumber. But she's acting like she doesn't know what it's called in English as she's trying to solidify this Spanish persona, allegedly. I don't really know what the truth is anymore. But it appears she's from Boston, and her name is Hillary, but she goes by Ilaria. So anyway, Alec Baldwin crashed Ilaria's SUV in the last couple of days into this tree. Now, get a load of this. I guess he was trying to get out ahead of the narrative and control it. He put out a video statement in the morning saying that some great, giant, big, trash truck cut him off, and he ran into this tree. Well, sure enough, like later that same day or the next morning, dash cam video was released from the trash truck, and guess what? It looked like they were driving on a one-lane road. Not even a divided highway, just two lanes, one going one way and one going the other. And it looks like Alec Baldwin, he was the driver. It appears as though he either tried to pass on the shoulder or he just wildly ran off into the woods as the trash truck was trying to make a turn, and he ran right into a tree and crashed out this SUV. So the actual dash cam totally, in my opinion, totally contradicted what he said about this trash truck pulling out in front of him. And let me put it like this, folks. We're going to be very diplomatic here on the MOA broadcast. The number one question in the comments repeatedly was whether or not he was administered a breathalyzer test or not. You can do with what you want with that information. But he appeared to be maybe, yeah. Folks wanted to know if there was a breathalyzer involved or not. Okay, let's jump in. Let's go to our final story. We'll do the HIT training, the HIT. We'll try and get another episode out in the next 2 to 3 days. And if not, you can catch it wherever you catch our show, whether Spotify, Apple, Amazon, or GearConvoy.com. But for our final story, we go to the New York Post. Naked Florida man terrorizes neighborhood. And locals say he's lucky he wasn't shot. A naked Florida man terrorized a neighborhood in a late-night naked rampage, breaking into multiple homes and destroying property, with alarmed neighbors saying he's lucky he wasn't shot dead. The buck-naked burglar... The buck-naked burglar, identified by police allegedly as 23-year-old Joshua Garrison, was caught on security cameras skulking through backyards in Pinellas Park outside St. Petersburg last week. And put your hands over your kids' ears, folks. He was allegedly touching himself sexually and causing significant damage. It doesn't really clarify if he was causing significant damage to himself sexually or property damage. Local neighbor David Dale told WFLA I was asleep, and when the doorbell rang, I answered it. I opened the door, and there was a guy standing there, stark naked. The fully nude Florida man seen terrorizing homes was identified again. It was allegedly Joshua Garrison. I'm looking at the online photos. Folks, he was walking around buck naked, and all I can say is, I guess because it's October, it was rather cold there that night. Allegedly, he threw a pot of plants through my truck window and tore the lights off the front of my house. Dale added. Another resident said he tried to get through the screen of a window before he ran into his backyard, began touching himself in a sexual manner, and came back with a weapon. Where did he have a weapon if he was buck naked? The article doesn't say where he stored the weapon. Oh, hang on. Clarification. He went into my shed and grabbed an axe and came back onto my back porch, Thomas Reichman said. We don't know why he didn't use it, I guess referring to the axe. Garrison then helped himself to a bottle of beer and a can of soda from an outdoor fridge before he took off and hopped over Reichman's 6-foot fence into the night. Locals were understandably shaken up by the string of bizarre break-ins, with one noting that many residents are armed and ready to defend their homes. Folks, constitutional note real quickly, they have recently legalized open carry in Florida. So, just a side note. One neighbor, unidentified neighbor, said, "We are all Second Amendment people here in Pinellas Park. We will shoot you." He stated the man was lucky they didn't wake up. Police responded and arrested Garrison on October 7, who is believed to be homeless. He is facing multiple charges, including armed residential burglary, 2 counts of residential burglaries, lewd behavior, criminal mischief, and violating probation, allegedly. All right, folks, that's going to do it. Don't wait to prepare and do have an emergency. If you wait, it may be too late. If you don't make it out alive, you don't make it out at all. Stay safe out there, folks.